The story of Genshin Impact is long, expanding across multiple regions, limited time events, and will only continue to grow both in spectacle and in complexity. This will be the first entry in a series aimed at simplifying and clarifying the main story as the game continues to progress and update, with side entries separately discussing theories and individual characters. Now, this did take a while to edit, so if this concept interests you, consider subscribing, becoming a channel member, or checking out the other series listed below. And without further ado, let's begin. Our story begins with the Travelers, their canonical name being Aether and Lumine, attempting to leave Teyvat only to be met with an unknown god, possibly a celestial or something more. They fight, and during this battle, one of the twins, that being the one who you didn't choose, is sealed away. For how long, we don't know, but your own powers are sealed off as well, that being the end of that particular cutscene interaction. It's unknown what exactly occurred that caused the twins to try to leave Teyvat, nor what happened to the one who was sealed away, but this will be discussed towards the end of Act 1. With their powers sealed away, the traveler falls into a deep slumber and at some point arrives in the mortal realm of Teyvat. For future reference, the mortal realm shall refer to anything from Enkonomiya to the Seven Nations, whereas Celestia and the Abyss shall be referred to separately. Teyvat will be used to refer to this world as a whole. Once the traveler awakens, they meet Paimon, a seemingly unique and knowledgeable fairy creature who acts as your guide throughout the mortal realm, but they do rarely offer you any information after Liyue's arc. Regardless, despite us not knowing how long the traveler has been asleep, it doesn't necessarily impact the story until later on, and with that being said, Paimon guides Aether, or Lumine, to a statue of the Seven that introduces us to the concept of the Seven Elements, with a brief mention of the Seven Archons and their respective ideals. Mondstadt. Our first main act begins in Mondstadt, revolving around Dvalin, one of the Four Winds, who's alternatively referred to as Storm Terror, attacking the city. He can briefly be seen interacting with Venti, who states, this in turn indicates that he may have been gone for some time. How long, we don't exactly know. What we are seeing here is Venti utilizing his powers to purify Dvalin. The traveler's own Anemo powers react, possibly due to them being new to using them, or perhaps due to Venti's own presence. Either way, it unnerves Dvalin, who is already in pain and agitated, and subsequently, it stops the purification process. This event in particular is what essentially sparks the main conflict of Mondstadt's arc. By interrupting Venti's purification process, Venti himself is also subsequently hurt as a result. In turn, this allows the corruption of Dvalin's mind to worsen, which causes him to attack Mondstadt further and fall under the Abyss's command. While this corruption does correlate to an event centuries prior, I will explain that in an entirely separate video due to how lore-heavy that one is. Subscribe if you are interested, though. Because of the corruption and continuous attacks on Mondstadt by Dvalin, the traveler teams up with Lisa, Kaya, Diluc, and Jean. The former two assist you in lessening Dvalin's power, whereas Jean and Diluc assist Venti, the Animal Archon, in restoring and purifying Dvalin himself. All throughout this, the Fatui, diplomats from Snezhnaya, attempt to gain more political control in Mondstadt and openly threaten Dvalin's life. But their primary allies at this time are members of the Lawrence clan, former nobility in Mondstadt who are related directly to Eula, though that shall be discussed in depth in another video regarding Mondstadt's history, because it's quite long and quite complicated depending on where you're looking. After the team secures the Holy Lyre, an ancient artifact of Barbados that had been stolen by the Fatui, their journey in purifying Dvalin continues onwards. With this in hand, Barbados, or Venti, and his newfound allies make their way to Old Mondstadt, ruins of Decarabian's former kingdom, which is now known and referred to as Storm Terror's lair. And after breaking the light seals, which were left behind even after Decarabian's death, they continue up the tower to battle Dvalin. After their battle ends and Dvalin is purified, the Animal Archon directs the traveler to Liyue, the land of contracts, geo, and commerce. This is specifically because the Rite of Ascension occurs once a year, and this would be the most opportune time to interact with Morax, the Geo Archon. However, Act 2 will be getting its own separate video discussing Liyue, its Archon, and the Adepti as considering or pertaining to someone particular, like Xiao or Morax or even Ajdaha. They deserve their own separate video, but if I can, depending on time, I may try and fit them all into one video. Liyue is a very, very packed nation in terms of history. Instead, this particular section will focus on bits of information that I did not mention during the beginning or main portion of this video. First and foremost, we have the important bit that sets off and interacts most with other plot points, this being the fact that Senora, a Fatui harbinger from Shana's Naya, ended up attacking Barbados, the Animal Archon, and taking away his Gnosis. Now, without going too far in depth in terms of speculation or theories, a Gnosis is essentially just a title or a badge that's given to an Archon that gives them their status as one of the seven. It does give them some power, but we don't exactly know how that power compares to their original strength. This is also taking into consideration that we don't exactly know when the Gnosis were bestowed upon individuals, whether it was during the original Archon War or shortly after it ended when there were only several victors remaining. Therefore, we don't have any exact feats regarding the Archons when they had their Gnosis versus when they didn't. A prime example of this will be featured later on in Inazuma and another in Liyue. So for now, just consider that Barbados has had his essential badge or Medal of Honor, bestowing him the title of an Archon taken away by another god, essentially. A secondary point to bring up is regarding the beginning portion, in which I said Venti has seemingly just woken up or just returned. Venti has an avid history regarding falling asleep for not just days or weeks, but instead centuries, and he'll miss out on extremely big and impactful events in Mondstadt's history. As a direct result, even though this slumber was induced due to a battle he, Dvalin, and Durin had, which Durin may be discussed in an entirely different Dragonspine related video, he was asleep for a couple of centuries at the very minimum, and as a direct result of that, we don't know how long he's been awake, nor what he knows regarding the present state of Mondstadt, which is why he says he's back now. That is also subsequently what allowed Dvalin's situation to worsen to this extent. Next will be Dvalin in particular. Now, given that he's one of the four winds, he's an extremely powerful individual. However, the corruption in his mind wasn't simply due to the Abyss, it's also due to Durin, the dragon that is sealed in Dragonspine. At one point, Durin and Dvalin were close friends. However, over time, due to the corruption that seethed within Durin, given that he was a false dragon or a simple creation by another nation, he essentially became corrupted, attacked Dvalin and the land of Mondstadt, and ultimately was sealed and killed by both Dvalin and Barbados. His death and his blood not only tainted the land and killed numerous individual humans, one of which being Senora's husband, but also subsequently poisoned Dvalin and hurt Barbados, both of whom have been affected by that long term, both in terms of their view of each other in a situation, but also in terms of their strength and power, with Dvalin falling further and further into that corruption, and Barbados falling into a deep slumber. Tidbits of lore and information can be seen in terms of the materials and items we get from Dvalin, as well as particular bits of weaponry we get, such as Elegy for the End and Skyward Harp. However, keeping all of this in mind, the main bits of information that you want to keep going into Act 2 or into Liyue, Inazuma, and further Archon quests and adventures beyond is that the Fatui are collecting the Gnosis, essentially the powers of gods, and that the Abyss has also been attempting to subjugate or gain the powers of those gods as well. What this virtually means is that most of the nations we visit are beset both by the Abyss and the Fatui, who will become more active players later on. Regardless, that's going to do for this video. I kept it relatively short, or tried to at the very least. If you enjoyed, leave a like down below, consider subscribing or commenting, both would be greatly appreciated. Become a channel member today, as it does help me out. I'll try to make these more frequently, depending on the response I get, as I know my channel is mostly focused on Blue Archive. But, regardless, hope you understood this a bit better, hope you like the editing and the new style, and I hope to see you next time.